Well, and now to Gaza, where severely needed aid, as Libby mentioned. Those trucks are now crossing the border there. Israel beginning what they're calling a tactical pause in fighting about 10 hours a day to allow for the aid to enter Gaza. Israel is facing global pressure as starvation has killed more than 100 Gazans. Airdrops of food and supplies, though, like these that you see here, have been criticized by humanitarian groups as inefficient and as dangerous. And on the sea, Israel confirming they've intercepted a Gaza-bound ship carrying aid and activists. The ship was stopped 70 miles away from where it was going. A live stream showing Israel's military boarding the ship as the activists waited on deck with their hands in the air. The group says lawyers are waiting to speak to the crew. Joining us now to discuss our political panel, Democratic strategist Madeline Somerville and Republican strategist Jacquie Jordan. Ladies, great to see you both. Great to have you as well. Jacquie, I'd like to start with you. You know, we had the president saying before this meeting there was a 50-50 shot the U.S. reaches a trade deal with the EU. Now we have it. The president saying it imposes a 15% tariff on most European goods to the U.S., hundreds of billions in investments into American industry as well. What immediate and long-term effects are you anticipating for the American consumer? And also, would you mind addressing some of the criticisms from those who are adamant that all of this is going to drive up inflation and that the American public is going to be the ones ultimately paying these tariffs?
You know, that's kind of been the whole excuse against the tariffs for quite a while, that we would be absorbing a lot of inflation. But what people don't recognize is that the stock market closed at an all-time high this past Friday, and I believe it was in positive anticipation of this good deal, reaching a trade agreement, because we didn't have a lot of volume move on Friday, in spite of the fact that the stock market was so optimistic. And now that driven by, of course, the futures. And so I think with this, you know, with our win of the deal that President Trump made today, 5 days earlier than the deadline, I think that we are, you know, we're going to start to earn. We're going to be the biggest supplier. I mean, it looks like we're going to be supplying oil. We're going to be supplying all sorts of goods and services and cars to Europe. I think this is actually even good for Europe. I don't think that they're going to be looking at the incredible debt war that they were afraid of doing it. When it was really an intense negotiation at a previous time. I think the president had threatened 30% tariff to Europe, so 15% is really good. There's still different tariffs and goods that still need to be negotiated outside of this original agreement that's coming in. I think pharmaceuticals will be held outside of it. Our imports will, of course, be 15%, but we're not going to be, we will not be paying a tariff to Europe for providing our goods. Will be at 0%, which is really a great advantage. And this goes to the bigger picture of what President Donald Trump is doing for our economy and wanting to make sure that we are doing fair trade and we are bringing, you know, earning as a country. We can't even begin to touch our debt or our solvency if we're not earning fairly with the countries that we do business with.
Well, it will be interesting to see how the markets react this week. You know, Madeline, I wanted to ask you too, the EU Commission president said this ahead of talks. I thought this was interesting.
I think the president is right. We have a 50 to 50% chance to strike a deal. And indeed, it is about rebalancing. So you can call it fairness, you can call it rebalancing. We have a surplus, the United States has a deficit, and we have to rebalance it. We have an excellent trade relation. It's a huge volume of trade that we have together. So we will make it more sustainable.
So now we have this deal and more important trade talks on the horizon as well, as you know, with the UK, with China too. What message does this deal and her sentiment send ahead of those discussions?
I think it's interesting that we're talking about fairness and who this is good for, because the EU doesn't think this is good for the EU. Japan doesn't think that that was good for Japan. Essentially, what's happened here is this is a shakedown. It's like there's a new landlord in town and we're coming around asking for all the rent that we think we're due, even though, again, a deficit is, there's no problem with having a trade deficit, right? All that means is I buy from you and you don't buy from me. I might not want what you have. I go to the grocery store doesn't pay me. right? That's all that is. So I think
because as a country, we've been overpaying in a lot of areas to other countries for products that have been coming into this country for a very long time. And I think the president's been looking to correct that and right that through these open talks at this time.
I think it's a good talking point, and I think it looks good to people, and it sounds good to people. But I think the people deserve to know what actually the implications are for them, which is higher prices, inflation. And her sentiment going into this, to me, sounds a little bit benign. It sounded a little bit just like, yes, I care about this being fair. We're going to try to make this as fair as possible. But if every other country keeps getting the raw end of the deal, I'm scared about what our stance will be. Not only will we be paying more for things, but other countries are not going to like us anymore. And that was not what.
Well, wait a minute, Jacquie. Sorry, let's just let her finish, and I'll ensure that you have time to respond. I promise. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Madeline.
Yeah, no. That was, and obviously Trump said, when he was campaigning, all the other countries are laughing at us. Well, if you look at the news in the other countries, they don't feel like they've gotten a good deal. None of them do. And so I think we're really not buying goodwill here with what Trump has done.
Jacquie, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think that, we only look at ourselves as consumers, world consumers, that, the United States is only the shoppers of the world products. And that's not only the case, that we are actually also the providers and that we have assets that can be sold around the world in a fair trade market. And I think that's what the president is trying to establish here.
Well, I hear the arguments on both sides. I appreciate you articulating them. Madeline Somerville, Jacquie Jordan, great to have you both. Thank you.
Thank you so much.